Hello, everyone. Welcome to what will be episode 9 of whatever we're calling this series. Everything you want to know, ask about surrogacy, something like that. Tonight's topic is when do you plan a sibling journey, and we are joined collaborator. Awkward pause. There she is.
Hello. I'm here, and I say it just always takes a few technical moments,
Yeah.
right?
There's always like a little brief gap, and then I'm like,
Oh, is she? Is she? I swear, I stare at it. I'm waiting in eager anticipation every week. So,
we're nine for nine now, and hopefully my
Woo!
phone won't die, and we'll have at least
I,
8 of those 9 recordings.
as long as you charge. So I was like, I charged earlier today just to be safe. So,
Yep, yep.
I
All right. Hello.
know. Hello. How are things?
Good, good. My throat's a little off,
Uh
so
oh. Uh oh.
apologies if I'm like sipping water every time you talk. But
That's okay. It's okay.
tonight's topic: when do you start planning a sibling journey? Which, just to be clear with sibling, we're not necessarily meaning that like a surrogate is caring for exactly the same intended parents and that it's like a literal sibling for the first
And
baby. I think
I
it's
was gonna
more like,
ask, like, were you talking about like from the gestational carrier's perspective, or are we talking from intended
well,
parent
I
perspective? I would
I
say
think
we
we
have
should
two different ways, right?
I think we should broaden it. I think we should do
Okay.
both.
Okay.
And I think we should talk about, well, what if it is the same IP, is the
hmm
same surrogate, but then also like, what if it's just about a second journey or subsequent journey for either
Either side.
side?
Either side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Which
All
do you want to
right.
tackle first?
I was going to ask you the same question. I was supposed to question you, Jen. Didn't you get the memo? Let's start with a surrogate who
Okay.
has she's finished her first journey.
I
And
will. I will say that one sometimes slays me because we will get a call like, well, people when we call to check and be like, "Hey, how'd delivery go? I want to do this again," and I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, just hold on, just a
yeah.
minute. It's a little too early, right? Like you're high on endorphins right now, so hold on.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes it's just like literally moment of delivery and it's like I want to do this forever. I want to do this
Mhm.
again and again and again.
Which is amazing,
Yeah.
but it's not quite. I mean, I will also say sometimes people approach us before and they're like, "I've loved this. I want to do this. Like multiple times. Like, how can I do this before?" And I'm like, "You haven't even delivered yet. Like you gotta." Get
Yeah.
through that, get through recovery also, right? Go to see your OB at 6 weeks or whatever amount of time afterwards and see what they say and how you feel. Because like once you get your body back and your family back, you may fall into a totally different routine that you're happy with actually, and you're like, I really don't want to re-disrupt my family again. So it's like
Yeah.
don't commit too early. Like we love when people are excited about it, right? But sometimes it's too early.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. There's a lot of like, even in preparing early on, we will have first time surrogates that come in
Mhm.
wanting to do this multiple times, or
Yeah,
intended parents that come in hoping to match with a surrogate that could carry for them again.
right.
And there's just like so many things that could disrupt that beautiful plan that we just
Exactly.
have to be like, well, we have to
And
take
it's
one
like
step at a time.
intention is wonderful, right? Like that's
Right.
the good thing about that. Having that intention, fantastic. But you
Yeah.
can't act on the intention until you've
Yeah.
been through where you need to go.
I have to imagine that you, like us, have seen many cases of postpartum preeclampsia,
Mhm.
of postpartum hemorrhages, and other like delivery complications that
Right.
have a chance of recurrence and could render somebody ineligible for a future journey. And
Or
that's obviously
even
not, yeah,
even life situation changes. We've had gestational carriers who have said, "Oh, I'd love to come back and do this again." And something happens in their relationship, and it turns out that they are now
yeah,
going through a divorce, or that something happens, and their children need far more attention than they
yeah,
thought they would need during that season in their life. Like every moment should be evaluated on the basis of that specific moment.
And to be fair, vice versa,
Mhm.
where maybe surrogate finishes up first journey and is like, I'm good. I'm retired. This was lovely.
Mhm.
Like, just, not for me. And then,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and we've seen that.
Year and a half, two
Mhm.
years later, yeah.
Not even oftentimes that much time. Like maybe it's just like in that initial month postpartum, they're like, I'm good. And then even 6 months later, they're just kind of like, I'm missing a big part of like what gives me meaning in
Yeah.
life, and like this has become part of my identity. And so definitely things can shift in either direction.
Right.
Okay, but
Okay.
let's just say, okay, let's say surrogate finishes up, had a wonderful experience, medically can do this again, wants to do this again, family is still in a place to do this again.
Mhm.
Then we have to talk through like, well, what is a safe interpregnancy interval?
I was gonna say, so it depends how the delivery was, right? You can
Mhm.
have a C-section and it be complication free, right? There's plenty of reasons that people have C-sections that are not medical complications that would prevent you from becoming a gestational carrier again. And I will say, I know I'm super conservative about this, and I'm sure you are too, that the interval between pregnancies is that you shouldn't transfer again for 12 months after a vaginal delivery and 18 months after a C-section. And
Yeah.
so I think that's some of the times the biggest disappointment I see is people go, well, I just had a C-section. I'm just like, and then we're gonna wait a little bit. Like, but if you're patient, it's worth the wait. It's just that we
Yeah.
really want to make sure that we're not putting you in a harm position, right? Like you want to let that body heal and that C-section scar heal so that you're at less risk of things like a uterine rupture, and that so you're safer and the baby is safer in the long run.
Right. Which does create an additional, I mean, things can come up at any point, but I think specifically with a C-section scar, um, when we get a year and a half later, or maybe a little bit short of it because we're screening in advance of
Screening earlier, yeah.
transfer,
Yeah, yeah.
there's always the chance that you go for that saline sonogram and realize that the C-section scar healed in such a way where there's like an isthmus seal or something
That's
that,
exactly what I was gonna say. Is an isthmus
yeah,
field. Like that's the one thing that people don't realize that that's not great. I mean, it can cause well, I don't lack of a better word. It's not ectopic because it's not in the fallopian tubes, but essentially
yeah,
it's a space where the embryo can implant in that scar and really. I mean, unfortunately, it would not be able
yeah,
to be carried to term, and it would be very, very dangerous if that happened.
right, right. So medically, there's an interval that
Mhm.
we follow. The ACOG, American College of OBGYNs, I think is something like that. Their guidelines for what is the safest
Yep.
time period to wait. And then, you were alluding to this and saying that life circumstances change, but also like, do you still have the support of everybody around you to do this again?
Did they enjoy it? Right.
Hmm. And are they ready for you to have restrictions, right? You may say, I'm good. I don't need to travel for, a period of time. I don't need to drink. I don't need to, eat
Yeah.
sushi. I don't need to run around with my kids or whatever. But maybe they want to go to the Bahamas, and they want you to be a more active parent or spouse. And so I think everybody has opinions now with you having gone through it. So
Exactly. And they've
yeah,
experienced and they know now the true depth of the disruption to the household.
yeah,
Disruption or non-disruption, depending on how it worked for any given household, right? For some people, it is an extraordinary disruption because they were really active and out and traveling. And some people are like, I was a homebody anyway. So this is, and my family lives nearby. We didn't have to go
yeah.
anywhere. It was not a big deal. So it really is like case by case in that regard.
Mhm.
I mean, but the true answer, I mean, I think sometimes the answer is like that question is like, when can we start thinking about it again? Like beyond that is that generally we say wait till at least after the 6 weeks postpartum appointment. My preference is to wait until 3 or 4 months after before we start collecting any medical records again, because if you want to transfer right at that 6 month or 6 month, 12-month period
Yeah.
after. So generally, you can think about matching again 6 months postpartum because, I think even repeat gestational carriers forget how long the process. It's that level of like amnesia that
Yeah.
you forget how painful delivery is. You forget how painful the wait time is to get from matching to transfer. They forget that it's a generally 6-ish month period of time from when you start to match to when you actually get to an embryo transfer. So there's not an advantage to jumping any earlier than kind of that 3 to 4 month mark afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, for us as an agency, we're always happy to like start with the records
Mhm.
collection, as you said, and just make sure that, oh, there wasn't anything in this last pregnancy and the
Right,
delivery note that, like, because we've all seen so many times surrogates say, I have no idea I was diagnosed with XYZ. I had no
right,
idea that even happened. Because providers aren't always the best communicators about,
right,
especially in the chaos of labor and delivery, about what is going on.
right.
So there may be some news waiting for them in the medical records. But yeah, I'm right there with you. 6 month mark is really when we would sort of truly kick off the next journey. And I think there are surrogates that
For a
figure
vaginal delivery, I
for
say
vaginal
year
delivery. Yes,
year for C-section. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But also, if you're working with exactly the same intended parents, there's also an assumption that, like, okay, well, the contract won't take very long because we already have one. Nope.
Oh yeah, on both sides,
Yeah,
people forget how
painful.
long it took. And also, the parents now have a newborn. And so they have a lot more
Yeah.
distraction going on in their life.
Yes. So yeah, we have a case where, say right now, same surrogate, same intended parents. We figured, oh, we have all the time in the world. This will be easy breezy. We started the screening process with tons of time to spare, like same lawyers involved, like every
Mhm.
truly a rinse and repeat.
Yep.
And yet, I think we're finally gearing up for transfer come May, and some of that is within their control, and nobody's in like a rush. But
Right, right, right.
it's yeah, it's been a long road, even though this is second time for all of them.
It
Yeah,
we like to say like that. I mean, while experienced gestational carriers and experienced parents are great, like actually sometimes they're worse because the level of amnesia of what we really went through, because you just don't, it seems so easy the first time, right? So
yeah,
therefore you don't think about all the steps that you went through.
yep, yep. Um, okay, so anything else for when surrogates should how they should approach planning a sibling journey? Actually, why don't we talk about the conversation and how, and I think there's a lot of ways this can be handled, but like if you are on one side, and we'll talk about the intended parents in a second, but if you want to know, hey, did they want to work with me again?
Mhm.
Um, what do you have advice on how?
That one's hard because it really depends on the relationship
Yeah,
between the parents and the carrier, and also the relationship with your agency, because sometimes people just bond with like their caseworker at any given program, right? Like, so they're just like, hey, I'm really feel more comfortable reaching out to them. We've had it happen both ways, that people have said, hey, they'll come to us and say, we're interested, do you have anything? And I say, do you feel comfortable reaching out? Would you prefer, like, or would you prefer that we all have a conversation together, that I just make a meeting and we just do it as a like, hey, we're just all going to get together and reconnect afterwards? Or do you want me to be the one who do it? So there's not a right or wrong on that one.
yeah.
It really is down to each individual's perspective. I mean, what about you? How do you guys approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice when you have a third party that can sort of test the waters without committing either side. So,
Yeah.
like, if we have intended parents that are like, we think we had a good experience, and like, assuming medically that she could do this again, like, do you want to just see if she's interested in doing it again and doing it with us, what her proposed timeline is? So, I think there's like ways that we can just sort of ask the generic question to both sides, like, hey,
Yep.
do you want to do this again? When would you, is this like as soon as possible? Or,
Right.
is life lifing and you want to sort of push it off? And would you want it to be with them? And
Yep.
so, you know, I, we're very happy to be the conduit for those questions, but also there's so many matches that have a really open, honest, and direct communication like with each other that it would almost feel weird if we were
Yeah,
probing because they probably would just like be on FaceTime anyway and have talked
right.
about everything together for the last year. And so to not just be like, hello, we want another child. Will you do this for us? Like, may feel
Exactly.
almost like,
We
yeah,
had one recently. Well, I guess they've delivered the second one, so it just feels recently. But that the carrier came to us and said, "Hey, I'm interested in doing a second journey." It was far enough along. She was at that point, so we did everything. We were just working on matching her, and I was talking to her, and we were just making some arrangements and just making sure the match was good. That we had proposed. And she goes, "Oh, I'm going to go visit the intended parents and baby this weekend."
ooh, I know what's going to happen in your story.
Yep. And sure enough, afterwards she called and she said, "Hey, you know what? That match was really lovely and they seem like really nice people, but parents asked while I was there if I would consider doing a sibling journey." And she's like, of course, that
Yeah,
is absolutely my priority. And so I think sometimes until you either see each other in person, like you may not know that the other side is interested. I don't think either side knew. I don't think they knew she was pursuing another journey. And I
yeah.
don't think she knew that they were interested until they got together and had that conversation.
Sure. We have a surrogate right now who like started the process with us. She's been very transparent. She's done this before. She basically said like, I will know if my last intended parents want to do this again by early April. So let's just
Mhm.
kind of like pause a little bit. But she's like, I want to hit the ground. If they're not ready,
Yep.
I'm ready. And I want to hit the ground running as soon as I get like a
We have,
sort of
we have one of those right.
hesitation
We
or
have one of
no.
those right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
I'm like,
Exactly.
that's fine. Never want to like disrupt that. And,
Nope. Those
okay.
relationships are so valuable, right? Like, and that's the thing. We always want to support those amazing relationships. That's the point.
Yeah, that's right. Um, okay, so if you are now the intended parents,
Yeah.
and this brings up a lot of other
I was just saying,
considerations
this one's
around.
hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the question before we dive in with all the different factors, the question for the intended parents again is like, when do they start planning a sibling journey?
Mhm.
And as you certainly know, and many who have joined us probably know as well, sometimes the planning for the second journey is well underway before the first one even really kicks off. Like maybe they've already signed up with an agency for two journeys,
Mhm.
or they've sort of re signed with the agency even though they're not even pregnant with the first journey. Um, but, I think the main thing, and then we can talk about how this sort of plays out in policies and procedures. The main thing is like, well, in an ideal world, how far spaced are your kids?
Right. Well, and that's personal too, right? Like,
Right.
so, I could throw this at you and you can throw your personal, like, how did you guys decide, like, what interval you wanted? Did you decide, or did you just kind of like be like, okay, we're just gonna try this again as soon as, like, did you have a conscious thought about how you were doing that and how you were spacing your children?
Um, that's a great question. I am the youngest of three, and there's 5.5 years to my middle brother and 8 years to my sister. So I have had the experience of like a more significant gap. Not that, people have bigger gaps for sure. Um, so I think I wanted, I mean, I'm close with my siblings now as adults, but I think that gap is meaningful when you're kids.
Mhm.
And I think I wanted, ideally, we knew we wanted at least two kids, and I wanted them to be a little bit closer, but also we knew that the twins, twiblings, whatever we're talking about when they're like
It's
really
that
close
close. Yep.
together, was not a goal for us. So we basically finished the first journey, had our older daughter, and then just like casually started to think about the second journey, and it coincided with me quitting my job and starting this agency, and it's a weird, it's a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
um and so that was a lot of what ended up dictating our girls difference, which is 2.5 years. But sometimes intended parents want as close to twins as possible,
Sure.
which
I
opens the
mean,
whole
that
thing.
is people's desire. And I will say, I think we can point to a lot of things, like, for example, the ASRM. So, for those that don't know, American Society for Reproductive Medicine came out with guidelines that called for no concurrent pregnancies.
Mhm.
And that does not just mean, I think a lot of people go, oh, so I can't have two surrogates. It also is parents not intentionally trying to become pregnant themselves at the same
Yep.
time. Or if they are pregnant and they have a surrogate, if they find out they're pregnant, then they need to find out if that surrogate is willing to hold for them or potentially not pursue that surrogacy journey at that time. So
Yeah.
it's a very complex and so no concurrent journey means that the kids need to be at least 9 months apart, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I will say, and I think a lot of people struggle with the why on this, and I I feel really strongly, and I think that you as somebody who's in a same sex relationship who had to come out at your own choosing of time, right? Like, I hope at your own choosing of time when you were ready to, right? Like, I know that's not always the case for people, right?
Yeah.
But the way I describe it is very similar to having to be outed, like against your will. So
Mhm.
if you are a child of a concurrent journey that's too close, on a mental health front, people are going to know, especially when you're a child, and they're going to say, well, how did that happen? And they're going to ask over and over and over and over again. And so these kids are going to now be forced to out their story
Yeah.
about how they were born and how they were conceived and how, those things, whether they want to or not. They may be fine with it, but you're forcing them to take that story and to have to tell it over and over again when sometimes they may not be okay with telling that story or in that moment may not be okay with telling that story. And so I think for, just even as thinking about the perspective and the mental health of the kids, it is absolutely an amazing policy that they're putting forward, that to say, hey, you know what, let's protect these kids going forward.
Yes. I see that. To play devil's advocate, this is,
Fair.
I think, maybe the first time we will,
Oh, we
first
get
and
to
maybe
go
only
against
time
each
we
other.
will
Okay.
somewhat disagree on this.
Okay.
I mean, for my daughters, every time sort of the fact that they have two dads is mentioned, they are in some ways have to explain their conception or there will be
That's true.
questions. And so, I'm not saying that this was what you were saying, but does it make it, unethical to sort of bring them into the world and burden them with that sort of, weight of having to explain their,
No, that's very
yeah,
fair, and I appreciate that kickback on that, and it'll make me kind of put some headspace into how I think about it. I mean, I do know the mental health professionals that their concern is for the mental health of the kids. Like that is
yeah.
why they proposed that policy as part of that. But I do appreciate that perspective, that you're right. Like, similarly, they are also, when by virtue of
Yeah.
having.
I mean, I am all for like centering the kids in this because I think we both know that oftentimes that's the perspective that's getting lost. With the focus is like getting to the baby, getting to the baby, get me to the
Right,
baby, right?
right,
It's the focus in the conversations around donors and the relationship. Like, obviously, it is a faster, smoother process if you have an anonymous egg donor who has already frozen eggs, or you have a sperm donor whose vials of sperm are already sitting in a bank and they're just shipped and
right,
whammo bammo, we're off. um, and that loses a lot. And so I think the conversation thankfully has gotten a little bit better around donor conception. um, and so we still are fighting an uphill battle to make sure that the kids aren't lost as we focus on the creation of families, because those kids grow up to adults and yada yada.
right,
So
right, right.
God willing. So
Exactly. Exactly. So, okay. So
so
sorry,
I so I
we went a little
appreciate,
off to the side on that. Yeah,
yeah. So
but
I appreciate the concern of the mental health professionals. It just, the fact that that ASRM guideline is sort of there as a blanket policy without much explanation is always
Yep.
rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Not that I'm desirous of like completely overlapping.
Well, and so the good
Yeah.
news is it is a guideline, not a something that, and I will say even pre that coming out, my internal agency request was that there be no closer than 4 months.
Hmm.
Just because if somebody goes early, if somebody, like whatever, like you want
Yeah.
to be able to concentrate and spend time also paying attention to both gestational carriers and give them the due that they are for the amazing thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
um, I shifted mine, and I will say my policy does not line up fully with ASRM guidelines. So
Mhm.
mine is no closer than 6 months. It is what it
Right.
is what my
That's
internal.
that's essentially what ours is as well.
Yeah,
So yeah, we're sort of splitting the difference.
exactly, exactly. So
Um,
that's why
so
I want it to be far enough, right, that they
yeah,
can pay attention to both gestational carriers, but
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, just nudge a little bit in the direction,
yeah,
but
exactly, exactly.
okay, so that's assuming that intended parents want their kids as close as possible,
Right.
and then they have to back up from that, of course, because there are wait times to match, there are things from match to transfer, there's a lot that's outside of our control anyway, but in an
Right.
ideal world where everything moves the way it should, intended parents that want kids in close succession really do have to start planning for the second journey
Yep.
before the first is really that far along. And so,
Exactly.
I have that conversation with people all the time. But on the flip side, knowing that it takes so long, if you don't want your kids to have too long of a gap, you also just have to watch time because like you have a 1 year old and a 2 year old and you're busy and you're working and you have
And
this little kid, but you need to remember that it's going to take a while to match you and it's going to take a while
that
to get the
amnesia is
transfer.
real. Yeah.
Right.
I
Yeah.
I definitely I'm sure you'll explain how you do it too, but we've had people to handle it a couple different directions. So exactly what you alluded to earlier, I've had people who have signed on immediately for two journeys at the same, like they just literally they're on our list, boom boom.
Twice. Yep.
And what we say is, great, we can match you that first time. You're just going to be close to the top of the list waiting. We won't rematch you again for that second one, most likely, because unless we can find a gestational carrier who's willing to hold, is what it comes down to. So at least then that puts them high in the priority list when they're looking for that second one. The other thing I see people do a lot of the time is immediately after delivery of the first, they will then put their name back on the list because then that gives them enough time to acclimate to being new parents.
Yep.
And then before they have another match. And so then there's still at least a reasonable interval between the kids at that point in time.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes we find though that people will come back if they do that and they'll pull themselves off the list because having a newborn was harder than they thought it would be.
Yes, we've had that, and life changes in all sorts of directions, and
Mhm.
financially,
Yeah,
I mean, that's the elephant in the room is if
it's
you are trying to
expensive.
have your kids relatively close in
Mhm.
age, the amount of money that you need tied up in an escrow account all at once, if your
A
first one
lot.
is just ending and you are putting
Mhm.
in six figures into an escrow account for the second journey, we're looking at liquidity to not that I would like understand finance in the slightest, but like they tell me liquidity
Right.
you have to have liquidity in excess of $300,000
Right.
all at one point in time, and that is not achievable for
And
most middle class
also
Americans.
not making some major life changes. Like we
Yeah,
definitely have had to like have parents be very conscious of the fact that, hey, if you're talking about moving and buying a house during this process, like you have to be really careful about things like mortgage lenders don't like when you move large sums of money. And so like it's not that we're saying don't buy a house, don't get that house that is going to be amazing for your new family. It's you need to be conscious about when you're going to be able to move those funds or access those funds to make sure that you can
yeah.
go through that journey going forward.
Yes, yes,
And as
yes.
somebody said, having a newborn is expensive, and it is so true.
Yes, that too. Those 0 to 5 years,
Mhm.
just childcare alone.
And
Yeah,
wait till
it's.
they go to college. That's also really
I
expensive.
know.
So
Well, who said I'm letting them go to college? They can they can pay their own way.
I'm dealing with that one right now. So
Yeah. Okay. So for the intended parents, if they have a surrogate in mind, they also have to wait and make sure this makes sense medically. She wants to do this again. She wants to do this again with them.
Yep.
So I think there's some gamesmanship. Maybe they'll sign up not knowing whether they'd be working with their
Had that happen
surrogate
too.
again,
Yep.
or having to match again. But then we sort of get everybody together and sketch out the timeline and try to hit our goals together. But
I mean, I
any
think the answer is like, I mean, to both sides is have an honest conversation with an ethical professional and be willing to listen. It is what it comes down to. Like especially like surrogates don't push too hard, too fast. Parents, be honest about what your goals are, and we'll try to be honest about what is actually achievable.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap this up. So,
Amazing.
thanks as always for everybody that joined as we discuss sort of how to think about a sibling journey or second journey or whatever we're going to call it. And wait, what's next?
Oh, I don't know.
I
You have
always
control
say
of the
this and
master
then
list. I
I,
know.
I always say that I don't have the list in front of me. Anyway, we'll see you again
We
in two
will. Two
weeks,
weeks.
and
It'll be a surprise.
it'll
Mystery bonus in two
it'll
weeks.
be some fun, spicy topic. And reach out as always if you have any questions. Good to see
Amazing.
you, Jen.
You too. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.